Hey, podcast listeners, it's Savannah here, producer of Corporate Competitor Podcast, and we're thrilled to announce our return to weekly episodes. Our goal is to help you grow each and every week. Speaking of growth, most of you know that Don is one of the most in-demand speakers on the public circuit. So as your company is preparing an upcoming gathering, I wanted you to know about his newest and most popular keynote on the art of storytelling. Don teaches you how to connect deeply with any audience, big or small. You can now move beyond mere numbers and engage stakeholders with stories that resonate and inspire. Remember, this skill is teachable. Harness the techniques that make Don the greatest storyteller in America, as Simon Sinek and John Maxwell have said time and time again. If you want to learn more, visit donyaeger.com/storytelling to reach out to our team.
What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports Hall of Fame, like Chick-fil-A chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yaeger, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is the first woman president and CEO of Celebrity Cruises, Lisa Lutoff-Perlo. Her ascent from entry-level sales position to leading a multi-billion-dollar global company is testament to her relentless drive and determination. In the years leading up to the global pandemic, Lisa led Celebrity Cruises to historic financial performance. Her cruise line then led the industry back into service after the pandemic in June 2021, when Celebrity Edge was the first ship to sail from a U.S. port. Her journey is a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and challenging the status quo. She shares these stories and lessons in her brand new book, Making Waves: A Woman's Rise to the Top Using Smarts, Heart, and Courage, that is available now. Be sure to visit corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes to access our revamped downloadable PDF. This resource now includes my favorite quotes from today's episode, along with a practical leadership exercise designed to help you implement today's key lessons in 5 minutes or less.
People need to want to play for you. I have seen a lot of leaders fail because they didn't want to admit that they didn't know something. They always want to be the smartest person in the room. That's actually dumb. Any leader is really smart if they understand what their limitations are. If you ask for help, people become personally invested in your success. They want to win for you as much as they want to win.
Lisa, thanks for joining us.
Don, it is an absolute pleasure. I've really been looking forward to this. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're going to have a great time. I'm so fascinated by all that I've learned about your journey. You're a record breaker in so many places. First woman president and CEO of Celebrity Cruises when you took the helm there in 2014. And you went to work to make sure more women could follow in your footsteps. You didn't just do your thing. You actually made sure that you were making the path easier. And in fact, the numbers stood out. You increased the percentage of women on the bridges of your ships from 3% to 33% during your tenure. Tell me about that journey. What was the most difficult thing you had to go through to make that come to be?
Thank you for acknowledging it and recognizing it. Our industry, which is over 100 years old, it's very much a male-dominated industry. not unlike many, but unique, certainly unique. And one of the most unique things, Don, is that there aren't a lot of women who opt into this type of career or lifestyle. So that's probably the most difficult part of it.
Sure.
You have to create some energy around it. You have to create excitement around it. You have to have other women tell the story about why it's such a great thing to do. I've been to quite a few maritime universities. Only 17% of the enrolled students at these maritime universities are women, and only about 10% end up graduating. This is global. This isn't just in the United States. These are global maritime universities all over the world. You have to partner with them. You have to find these women that are studying the maritime industry. You have to present the women that work on your brand and in your company, because it's one thing to hire women. It's another thing to create an environment and a culture where they are welcome, where they are empowered, where they're able to grow and achieve their career aspirations. So you're doing two things at once, as you can imagine, Dawn. You are recruiting and hiring these women, and you're changing a culture. 3% of our bridges were women, 2% of mariners in the world are women.
Yes.
And we grew to 33%. So you all have to be focused on the same thing and the same goal. Like any sports team, you have your end game in mind. You know what you have to do to get there, and you have to create an environment where everybody believes in the same thing. It only takes one person on a bridge to not live up to the culture that you're trying to create, or not make these women feel welcome. And that can destroy everything you're looking to build.
Mm-hmm.
But like anything, when you put your mind to something, when you're purposeful about it, when you're disciplined around it, when you know it's the right thing to do, and when you surround yourself with like-minded people who care about the same things that you do, you just get to work. The most joy I've ever gotten is bringing other women along with me in an environment where there are not enough of us, and create more gender balance. And I started with the first big hire that I made, which was Captain Kate McHugh, complete rock star. She was the first and still only American woman to be at the helm of a mega cruise ship. And she was Celebrity's first captain at the time as a woman. It all started with her and just continued to grow from that 3% to 33%. And she's been a great help in recruiting amazing women to the Celebrity brand because of what she stands for and who she is. And she's a great role model for them. But I also did it with the help of great men that I worked with who were running the Marine organization and who scanned the universe for these qualified women to join our bridge teams.
Wow. As much as it was an effort to try to draw women there, it was also a culture shift that you had to go through.
Huge.
Wow. A lot of people refer to their corporate organizations as teams. You've used it, but a lot of times I think it gets overused. Many of their organizations are really just a group of individuals who just happen to work at the same company. And they're not really a team. What are the elements that take a group from a collection of individuals, mold them together, and create a team?
It's culture, and it's how you hire.
Mm.
I don't hire for competence. I figure by the time someone sits in front of me, their competence has been well vetted.
Right.
We interview for culture to understand if people will strengthen our team or weaken our team, if they will play as a team or they're an individual looking for their own individual success. You don't always get it right.
Right.
But honestly, Don, I sit down and I have a conversation with people. I put their resume aside and I just open up a conversation. I ask them about their life. I ask them about their family. I ask them about the things they've accomplished. I ask them what was their proudest moment. What are some of the things that you've done? Why were they special to you? Sometimes what people don't say is as important as what people say. And you realize if people are talking about what they did, right then and there, they're very self-focused. It's all about them. It's all about me. When a leader says I instead of we, when I think everyone works for me versus I really work for everyone else, when I invert the hierarchy pyramid, I think the cleaner on the ship is way more important than me. When you have these conversations with people, look for keywords, look for things that they tell you that will help you determine If they are more focused on themselves or the greater good and the bigger team, hopefully you'll get it right most of the time. And it's funny because there's been different ways you can interview. Some people in my positions, the candidates would start with me. And then if I liked them, they would talk to the rest of the team. I didn't do it that way. They talked to the team, and then the team voted for who came to me.
Mm.
I would always have my team leaders interview people in twos before people came to me. And boy, let me tell you, they were really good at figuring out who was going to be a good member of the team. Because people can fool me maybe by saying certain things to me, but that team, they knew what they wanted. They knew what we needed. They knew what we were built to achieve. They knew what was important to all of us. And man, they were tough critics along the teamwork continuum. That's a really good way to help build your team, because people applying for these positions will know who their teammates are, and they know they're going to be judged by their teammates. And the team is going to know if this person will fit in the culture, and the candidate will know if they will fit in the culture.
I like that. Over your left shoulder there is a guitar hanging on the wall, which there are names all over that guitar. Now, who are all those autographs from?
Oh, that's a beautiful gift that was given to me from all of the women who were on the bridge and on the ship in leadership positions on our International Women's Day cruise on Celebrity Edge on March 8th of 2020.
Wow.
We all sailed on Celebrity Edge under the command of Captain Kate McHugh, and every single one of her bridge team were women, and every other leader on the ship for that cruise in every department was a woman. They were so honored and proud to be part of that history-making, barrier-breaking cruise. They signed this electric guitar that actually our associate hotel director, Melania, played in the Grand Plaza, standing on the bar, playing Led Zeppelin.
That's awesome.
And it hangs in my office as a reminder of that amazing accomplishment.
Mm.
It was the culmination of all the things that we just talked about, going from 3% to 33% of women on the bridge. We had an idea at Celebrity, because we're the only brand in the industry that could do this, of when do you think we could get to a place where we could have 100% of the bridge manned by women? And the head of our marine department, while we were having this discussion, said, we can do it now. I was shocked. I didn't, even me, as focused on that as I was, didn't know we had made so much progress. He said, what do you think we've been doing all these years?
I love it. I love it. We're going to put a picture of that on our episode page, because you set out to make a change.
Yes.
You actually do so, and then you get an opportunity to celebrate it. How amazing it is to think about it. March 8th, 2020, 2 weeks later, the world collapsed on you.
Okay. No, I got on March 8th. That was a Saturday. I got off on Wednesday. I was back in the office on Thursday and Friday. I went home Friday at the end of the day and never went back to my office until 15 months later, because that was the exact weekend our industry shut down from COVID.
Wow. So if that doesn't happen then, it doesn't happen for another year and a half. Wow.
Crazy.
Very incredible.
Yeah.
I read an article in CN Traveler in which you talked about the idea that no was a word you heard so often in your career that it became the driver for you to learn how to turn no's into yeses.
Yeah.
Can you share a pivotal moment where you turned a no into a yes, and what it taught you about perseverance and leadership?
Well, my background is sales. So maybe that's part of just what you go through, what you learn to deal with.
In sales, you're just used to being rejected, right?
Exactly. They teach us so often in sales, as you're starting out, how to overcome objections and what is it going to take to turn that no into a yes. And that must be the foundation from which I always looked at my career. It took me 30 years. I started at the very bottom and I rose to the top, and I was told no quite a few times along the way, or I had to pivot oftentimes, or sometimes not of my own desire. But the most pivotal time in my career was asking for the president and CEO role for one of our brands in the company and being told no quite a few times by our chairman, because he didn't believe I either had what it took or was ready. And what's also interesting about the story, Don, is that for the 2 vacancies that were open, 2 men had the position of president and CEO. One left the company, one went into a different role. Both of those men recommended me, no questions asked, as their successor, that I was the person that needed to take their place. I was ready. I was the best person for the job. I could do it. You really need to give this to Lisa. And yet he said, no, I just don't think you're ready. I just don't think I've seen you accomplish enough. I internalized my frustration. I spoke my mind directly because that's just who I am, to change his mind. And ultimately I did. We all have to be stewards of our own public relations campaign in our company or whatever you're trying to do. And I realized that I was managing one level up because these two men that vacated these positions recommended me for their role. But I obviously wasn't working two levels up or across the organization enough so that people would see what I was capable of. People would see the reason why these two men recommended me for the position. So I do believe that one of the things that helped me eventually turn that no into a yes was working much more closely with the chairman and CEO, who then became my advocate, my mentor, and got to see firsthand what I did, what I was capable of. And so he finally, many months, maybe almost a year later, decided, okay, yes, she is ready. She is capable. She is the best person for the job. It's just who I am. You told me no, I'm going to figure out how to change that to a yes. And I finally got it.
You have to be a steward of your own PR campaign. It's funny, I was on a mentoring call with some folks, and one of the things we talked about is how often many of us have grown up in a generation where we were told you don't go out and promote yourself. Sometimes you just can't lean on that. Sometimes you actually have to become a steward of your own PR campaign. People need to remember, if you're worthy, it's not bad.
And here's the thing. I believed exactly what you just said. I believed all I had to do was work hard. All I had to do was do a great job. All I had to do was prove myself time and time again in all of these different roles that I had in the company, and I was going to get that position. That's not what happens. It wasn't comfortable for me. I'm much more of an advocate for others than I am of myself. So it wasn't natural and it wasn't comfortable, but it was critical and it was necessary. I'm the first one to say to other people, you have just got to figure out how to do that in the right way. I've seen a lot of people do it in an obnoxious way, and that really turns me off. I could never do that because I wouldn't have been true to myself, but you really have to figure it out. You can't just think people are going to notice, because they don't.
Yeah. Most of us who love sports, we see or we feel momentum shifts.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have a moment. Something happens, a spark pushes you forward. Your Patriots are a powerful example in that when they had over the Atlanta Falcons, when they were down 28-3.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a moment where an event or a choice or a decision has shifted the momentum for you and maybe your business?
Absolutely. I believe it's really important to understand when that momentous occasion is going to occur and what you're going to do with it.
Be prepared.
Yeah, or recognize it. Sometimes things present themselves to you that if you're just thinking about it in the right way, it could become your momentum shift. There were quite a few people who were presidents and CEOs before me at Celebrity, and they met with some success, but they never met with the success that was expected of the brand. The board expected, the shareholders expected. I remember thinking, okay, you got the seat. Now what makes you think you're going to be able to do this? I had the opportunity to take a look at these new series of ships that we were building that were decided on before I came into the role. I knew that these ships needed to be a momentum changer for Celebrity. Everything that Celebrity had rode on this successful introduction of these ships, but these ships had to be transformational so they could transform the financial performance of the brand. And I remember there was a woman who was now working for me as the head of sales, who was my colleague for many years. From the minute I was appointed to the position, she asked me to go take a look at the general arrangement of the new ship. And I kept putting it off for 5 weeks. Dawn, the minute I looked at that wall, I knew what she was talking about. This ship was not going to be the momentum that Celebrity needed, and it was not going to be the ship that was going to transform our brand. I needed to ask for a timeout to completely redesign the ship, and rewrite the strategy for this series of ships that was coming out. A decision that took courage because the ship was already designed.
I was going to say, I bet it was a tad controversial given that you
it was.
they were already deep into the process.
It was done.
Right.
It was done. The ship was done. The strategy was done. And here I walk in 5 weeks later. I'm like, oh, no. We have to start over. And the strategy has to be completely rewritten.
You basically blew the entire thing up,
Yeah, basically.
But it was because you knew that that's what was going to happen in order for you to achieve the goals.
Right. And it was based on my years of experience, my years of working with the customer, my years of selling, marketing, branding, operating, consumer insights, consumer research. And that's what I tell people all the time. Gain as much experience as you can. We're in a world where everybody wants instant gratification.
They want to be fast.
Exactly. They'll come and see me and say, oh, I've been in the company for 5 years and I haven't been promoted to president and CEO yet. Okay, time out, dude. It took me 30 years. So don't complain to me about 5.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, did you ever think that time and patience and experience and learning might be a good thing and actually help you get those promotions? And what I learned when I finally got my yes and I finally got this position was that all of those years of waiting, of learning, of getting more experience helped me create that momentum for celebrity. While it might have taken me longer than I thought it should have, perhaps it happened at just the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that was the momentum and that was the changer for celebrity, the changer of the industry, and it truly transformed our brand. And that enabled me to be as successful as I was and leave behind an amazing legacy.
That's awesome. You got a new book out, Making Waves. And in chapter 5 of that book, you wrote that when your ambition and values butt heads, your values win.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm a value-based leader. I'm a value-based person. And we all know people who look the other way certain times, or as long as there's a lot of people, a lot of leaders that believe as long as you get the results, it doesn't really matter how you do that.
Right.
But for me, the how was always as important as the what. And I lived my life and led my team in that way, because if we weren't a value-based team, it comes down to people undermining things or doing things that only benefit themselves or their department or their own results. And then the brand doesn't win or the team doesn't win. And for me, it was always about the team. And if you are leading a culture, you have to think about how you hold everyone accountable to it. As soon as I looked the other way, where people realized maybe the integrity of what we were doing was in question, or someone behaved in a way that went against our culture or integrity or our values, that then was going to destroy everything I had built. So I had to walk the talk. I couldn't just talk about values and integrity and what we all needed to stand for as leaders and how we needed to build our business and our brand. If I had a person who knew my ambition and if I let this person continue doing what they were doing the way they were doing it, the ambition would be fulfilled, but the values would be compromised. I had to make a really tough decision where the values always won. And I've done that myself. I've always ensured that even though my ambition might be one thing, if I was ever going to put myself in a situation where it didn't really live up to the values that I held dear, I had to give up the ambition and go a different way.
It's so powerful. It's one thing to declare a set of values. It only takes one step away from those values to have it all crumble.
Yep. And I faced a lot of those decisions in my career. The decisions and the situations were gut-wrenching, but I always had to err on the side of the integrity and the culture. I never veered off that road.
I love it.
Yeah.
Your book was really fantastic. We're obviously encouraging everyone listening to grab a copy. But in your book, you mentioned the importance of phoning a friend, seeking help when needed.
Yeah.
And you note that many leaders fail to do that.
Right. There were many times throughout my career that I was chosen for positions where I was not the subject matter expert.
Mm.
I went from a sales and marketing career to an operational career, and I had no operational experience. And in many cases, I was the only woman. So the combination of being the only woman with no subject matter expertise led to skepticism by those people that I was leading, or people who were now my colleagues, that were wondering why I was there. There were a lot of reasons why I was selected, and there were a lot of things I didn't know. Any leader is really smart if they understand what their limitations are and they ask people for help to close their gap. I have seen a lot of leaders fail because they didn't want to admit that they didn't know something. They always want to be the smartest person in the room. That's actually dumb. You are not the smartest person in the room if you want to be or think you are. I've always wanted to surround myself with really smart people and people who are smarter than me. There was one particular time in my career, I was new to being the head of operations, and Celebrity was introducing yet another series of ships that was really important for the brand. It was the first time the brand had grown in well over a decade. And I'd never launched a ship before. As the leader, I knew I had a team of people. Some of us were all still relatively new, and I knew that the brand had a lot riding on it. And I went to our head of new build, who had a lot of experience, and I asked him if he would help me because I didn't want to fail, and I didn't know all the questions to ask, and I didn't know what I didn't know. He said, absolutely. And that first of the 5 ship introductions was an unbelievable success. If you develop a strong network of colleagues and you ask for help and they care about you, which is also a big part of my book, you should want people to care about you. Like I heard the Danny Amendola quote for the 10-part Apple Plus series of the Patriots dynasty. He said, Belichick was our boss, but we played for Brady. People need to want to play for you. People need to want to be invested in your success. They want to win for you as much as they want to win. If you ask for help, people become personally invested in your success. They're flattered, they're honored, and they see their success in your success. So I think phoning a friend, I've done it many, many times throughout my career. And that was one example where it really paid off for me, because in the absence of phoning that friend, that ship launch would not have been as successful as it needed to be for the brand.
I love it, because human nature is you revert to the flip side. I don't want to ask questions.
Right.
Because that lets everyone know that I don't know something.
Right.
And that, boy, maybe I'm the wrong leader.
Yeah.
But by asking questions, your argument is you actually get more people invested in you.
Yes. And you learn.
Right.
And it helps you be more successful, because I've watched a lot of people, Don, who wouldn't ask for help and didn't ask questions fail. They failed.
Yep.
And shame on them.
Yeah. You grew up in Massachusetts, oldest of 3 sisters.
Yeah.
And I know you like to say you were born into a leadership position.
Well, I say that I was a leader at age 2 because my first sister was born when I was 2 years old.
It gave you somebody to boss around.
Yeah, I did. And I loved it. She didn't. Neither of my sisters love that, because still to this day, you know, I'm like the boss, or I think I am. And it drives them crazy, but they love me. So they accept me for that. Yeah, I just thought that's what I was born to do.
Yeah.
Nobody told me that, although my parents always worked. So perhaps me believing it, and then oftentimes being put in a situation where I was in charge, really helped me hone my leadership skills and the realization that I was born to be a leader. And it continued as we were children, and I was the one getting her ready for school, brush your teeth, get on the school bus, made her lunch, made her dinner. And then when I got to school myself, I was always put in charge of the class when the nuns left. And I always helped them teach all the other kids cursive writing, the Palmer method of cursive writing. So I don't think my classmates liked me very much either, because I was kind of Miss Bossy Pants. But that was just what I was happy doing and being. And it just, I guess, served me well throughout my career in life. Hopefully, I'm a good leader and people see the value in my leadership. And so they don't resent it too much.
And I know your relationship with your sisters has been an important part of your life, your journey.
Yeah.
You made some reference in your book to the challenge of health and timing. Would you share a little story, if you don't mind, about that very difficult window of time?
Oh, yeah. Such a tough time in all of our lives and all of the world. I didn't think anything could get worse than being shut down for 15 months and trying to keep 20,000 people all over the world motivated and hopeful that we were going to come back. Even when some days I wasn't so sure myself as time dragged on and it just, we were caught in this limbo of COVID. But it was March of 2020 we closed down. It was April of 2020 that my sister was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And it was horrible. We lost her a year later, but the silver lining in the COVID-19 cloud was I got to spend every day of her last year of her life with her, which is wonderful because, as you can imagine, in the type of job and career that I had, I traveled all the time. I worked long days. I was gone weekends and nights. I wasn't then. I was here home and for those 15 months, and it was a gift for me and it was a gift for her. She lived with me too, so that made it a better situation for both of us. So getting through those times, though, you realize that you have to dig deep for all the strength that you need and all the fortitude that you need and all of the optimism and hope that you can provide both for your family that's depending on you, your employees that are depending on you, and even yourself.
Mm.
I didn't know how I got through those days either, but yeah, that was an incredible time for sure, Don, for sure.
Yeah.
As a leader, you really have to pivot, dial down some of those attributes that are so natural for you, that take the front seat of how you lead and how you drive as the president and CEO. And you need to flex and build some different muscles of leadership. You have to become that beacon of optimism and hope and confidence. And you have to try to get people through the days when they just don't know what's going on. They have nothing to do. They don't feel like they're contributing. They don't know if the business is coming back. I really leaned into those other types of qualities that are so important to get people through difficult times.
Talk about a pivot.
Yeah.
Numbers and what's our return on invested capital? And now I've got to say, but the sun came up this morning.
Exactly. We're all still here. Well, listen, there were so many different measures we looked at on how we could come out differently than when we shut down. And honestly, the day I did that, Don, the day I announced that this is what we were going to be doing while we were shut down, the entire mood of everyone changed.
Wow. I love it. So you used it as a window to reframe. And by doing that, you created a new level of energy. I love it.
Right.
Sports is an important part of what we do here. And I know sports athletes have been very important to you in the industry. Simone Biles.
Yeah.
I was surprised when I saw that she was chosen as the godmother of celebrity.
Yeah.
There are a lot of lessons you've learned from her and Tom Brady, who I know are important to you. Can you share a little bit about a lesson one of those athletes taught you during your time as a leader?
Well, those two athletes, they're both very important and special to me for a lot of different reasons, but also sports in general and teams in general have always been part of how I lead. And I always use sports analogies when I was in the room with my team talking about what we were going to accomplish and why we had to win as a team and why no one was more important than the other person. And we all win together or lose together. And you don't win a Super Bowl based on how good one person is. I believe running a business is a team sport.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, I'm from Massachusetts. I'm a New England girl. And I had the good fortune of the most wonderful memories watching the New England Patriots and Tom Brady for 20 years, go to 9 Super Bowls, win 6 rings, and also follow his career and the things that drove him. What I love about Tom Brady is, I have a chapter in my book called Watch Me Prove You Wrong. And he did that his entire career. And he never stopped doing it. Even after 6 rings and 9 appearances and a new team and a 7th ring. I followed him to the Buccaneers. I became a Buccaneers fan when he left the Patriots. The quote that I use in the book, I didn't come this far to only come this far. This is a guy who has accomplished everything and has nothing left to prove. And yet every single day he wakes up to prove his naysayers wrong and to accomplish something else that even he never dreamed of. He is an amazing role model and someone who accomplished such great things when there was very little that anyone thought he was ever going to be able to do.
You're right. I mean, think about it, 199th draft pick.
Right.
I've had a chance to spend some time with Tom over the years, work on stories with him. The fact that for years he carried and memorized the list of all those quarterbacks chosen ahead of him.
Yes. The 6, right?
Yeah.
The Brady 6 or something, I think
Right.
they called it. Yeah. Always kept it.
Nothing like having a little chip on your shoulder.
Or a big one. Now, the godmother is a tradition in our industry. This godmother is the spirit by which the ship will then sail.
Ah.
It's the spirit that guides our guests and it guides our crew. I always tried to find women to be godmothers of our ships who were heroic and who were transformative and who did something for the greater good, not just themselves. And Simone Biles was a great choice for us as the beacon and guiding light for our ships, our crew, and our guests. Not only what she accomplished as a gymnast, and oh, by the way, look what she's still accomplishing as a gymnast.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I admire that young woman so much. The courage that she had to say, I'm not okay. I need a timeout. To step away from her sport, to take care of her mental health. And the world was cruel to her. Shame on them.
Mm-hmm.
How many young women, how many young girls, how many men go through this in sports and all of the other terrible things that she had to live through with what was going on in gymnastics, what she's had to process in her career and in her life. And she still has this positive, beautiful energy and that exuberant smile. And she's still competing at the highest level at her age. Yeah, she was someone I admired so much. And she's delightful.
Lisa, let me thank you. I've learned so much. I've enjoyed studying you, getting prepared for today, and the opportunity to sit and spend time with you. Lisa, thank you today for being a corporate competitor.
Thank you, Don. I've done the same with you, and I am honored and flattered, my friend. It's been wonderful spending this time with you.
How much fun was that? Lisa Lutoff-Perlo was a star in this conversation filled with nuggets. I actually took 3 major things away. She talked about the fact that she was a 3-time candidate for the CEO job at Celebrity, and she was trying to win that position, but she failed the first 2 times, in part because her relationships had kind of ended one level above her with people that would have been her predecessors. They recommended her for the job, but the person 2 levels above her didn't really know her. So out of that second loss, she decided to do whatever it took to change the decision maker's mind. Instead of complaining about the situation, she kept looking for the answer, and she built that relationship 2 levels up, becoming a steward of her own PR campaign. So when the job came open a 3rd time, she was right there. The second was she talked about the importance of hiring, and we argue that there's nothing that changes a culture more quickly in an organization than who you choose to surround yourself with. She believes by the time a candidate gets to her, the candidate's competence is already established. So she doesn't need to spend her time in the conversation talking about competence. That's there. She wants to talk about culture. She would have her team decide who would actually make it up to her because the team knew what was required in order for the job to be filled appropriately. By the time it got to her, she wanted to know things about the candidate that would tell her about fit. What's your proudest moment? Why was that moment special to you? Asking those kinds of questions allowed her to better determine fit. Then the third takeaway for me was, you know what? Don't be afraid as a leader to phone a friend. Don't be afraid to ask for help because you're not always going to be the subject matter expert on everything that's required. And any leader who tries to pretend they are is selling fool's gold. What she knew was that there were always people that knew things. And when she called and asked for help, those people became invested in her success. Phone a friend. Don't be afraid to acknowledge the things that you don't know. And in that process, develop a team that allows you to go be special. What a fun day it was. I hope you gained as much from the conversation as I did. And I hope you'll leave now and go out and become a greater corporate competitor. Before we sign off, Is there someone you would love to learn from as a guest on this show? Send me a LinkedIn message with your guest suggestion. It is even better if you're connected with them in some way. We'll do that interview. We'll learn from them and we'll share the answers with you. Catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.